Hey everybody, it's been a while, a couple days at least. I wanted to make a non-scripted video, something that's like a little casual, kind of like how Vincent and Heaton did that cozy ass video where they're sitting on the pad talking about traveling and playing DDR. And I wanted creative inspiration but I'm remodeling my basement right now, and it's more like a creepy vibe. But that's okay. That's just something that we're all gonna have to get over together. So this story is how I ruined the best public ITG cab in Chicagoland, and I fucked it up. This entire thing's gonna be like off the top of my head, so I just gotta warn you, like this is like a B minus in terms of accuracy and like how good it is. Anyway, all of this happened over a decade ago. So the dead cab that I ruined was at Brunswick Zone Roselle. Before I go into the story, I need to give some context on like how that cab became the best cab in Chicagoland. So the ITG2 Dedicabs came out a little bit after the peak of DDR's popularity in the US. So at this point, it was like 2005, let's say. And Extreme was out for a few years, and Konami didn't really have plans for another mix. Presumably, the company who made ITG, Roxor, saw a business opportunity to capitalize on the popularity and made ITG, and eventually ITG2, which is the first one that had their like dedicated cabinet that everyone one of these guys. And for whatever reason, like Chicagoland got a shit ton of these. Like, here's a map of what I can happen to remember. Not all of these existed at the same time, but whatever, who cares? Eventually, Roxor got sued by Konami, and they lost rights to ITG. And at that point, ITG died. And it was like a year after that before the community figured out how to hack the machines and put their own themes and songs on it. I don't know how they did it. They must have found a USB somewhere on the ground outside of Roxor's office labeled, "This is how you hack the dance game machine." But now, to the person who's a little handy with computers and knows how to use Google, the ability to hack an ITG Dedicab was in their hands. Naturally, the community was very eager to start, hacking these machines. But there was a problem, and that problem was that arcade operators and owners were not super stoked about a bunch of 17-year-olds hacking their $10,000 arcade game. And honestly, now that I'm older, I can't blame them. If it was just as simple as like changing the theme around and adding a couple quality life changes or a couple songs, that would be fine. But the people hacking these things put things like free credit codes in there. They would lower the amount of quarters it would take to play around in there, both of which means the arcade owner gets less money. Or they would like put these like songs on there that the general public does not want to listen to. Like grandma taking her grandchildren bowling would be pretty upsetty spaghetti to hear speedcore blasting from the arcade. This Dedicab's really uncomfortable to sit on. But the community persevered, and this elite team of hackers hacked all these machines across Chicagoland. And by elite team of hackers, I'm pretty sure this was just one dude going around doing this. And I don't know who it was, but like headcanon-wise, I like to imagine him as this like tall dude with like slightly curly hair who like really has a propensity to wear a polo in his tournament matches. But anyway, the fact that there is only one dude going around hacking these machines, in addition to the fact that arcade owners would kick people out and ban people from venues if they were caught hacking the machine, this kind of led to all the machines in the area having a different condition with how updated their themes and songs were. And I remember in like 2007 to 2009, the best machine in the Chicagoland area would kind of bounce around. And somewhere during all of that, the best machine in the area landed at the Brunswick Zone in Roselle, Illinois. And I don't think it was like a conscious choice on the community's perspective. I think there were a bunch of small factors that kind of nudged Roselle to be the area. Like the ITG machine at Roselle, Illinois was pretty tucked away. So I would imagine it's easier to, do your pad modding and fuck around with the songs in an arcade that like not a lot of people even entered in the first place. Like, here's just kind of like some pictures that compares how open these machines were relative to each other. And I think the location had something to do with it as well. Like Roselle was sort of a midpoint for all the really good players at the time, so it's easier for them all to convene to a machine that they all can kind of get to, and just have Hacker Man come out and fix the machine every now and then. So the best players in the area kind of settled on this machine for like 2 years. And as a result of that, this machine had multiple world records on it. Everyone was having a great time until I ruined it. But how I ruined it is a little convoluted. See, the ITG software is a fork of Stepmania version 3.95. However, the Rockstar devs added a whole bunch of features on to 3.95. The engine itself was locked down and couldn't have features added to it or anything. During this time, a group of developers and reverse engineers and just a bunch of talented people created this thing called Open ITG, and the point of that was to make an open source equivalent based off of 3.95 that people can put onto their machines and then also add on top of. You can think of it as exactly like what Stepmania 5 accomplishes today, but like a decade ago. So they were fucking ahead of their time. So when these machines were getting hacked, people were replacing Roxor's 3.95s with OpenITG. And that was the first domino that led to the death of the Brunswick Zone Roselle machine. Because OpenITG was in beta at the time. The one on the machine was OpenITG Beta 2. And OpenITG Beta 2 had a very particular bug in it. It was very common in those days for a player to bring a USB thumb drive to save their scores in the front ports of the machine. OpenITG had this bug that would happen occasionally where you could plug in the USB and it wouldn't register or read the USB for like 15 minutes. Every time you plugged in a USB after that, it would always take 15 minutes until the machine was reset. And because it took 15 minutes to read the card, it was quicker to turn off the machine and turn it back on and then just play as normal. And this is like a fairly common thing that players did. Like, it wasn't every session, but like maybe every like 4th or 5th session, you'd have to power cycle it and then you'd be all Gucci. So like one day I'm out there with my friend and we reached the bug. So we're like, okay, we're going to power cycle the machine. We turn it off, we turn it on. We're just waiting, shooting the shit. We heard someone in the distance scream, "What are you doing?" So then me and my friend turned to the voice and like we're greeted by this fucking arcade tech who is seething. Like, this guy was so pissed off. Like, I don't know what these hacker people did to this person, but like he looked like we just like kicked his child or something like that. And he just sit there's like, "Why is the machine rebooting? What'd you do to the machine?" And we're like, we're playing dumb, so we're just like, I don't know, we don't fucking know what's going on. It just did that on its own. And then he's like looking at us. He like fucking looked into our soul. Really looks at us for a second. He's like, "Well, guess the machine's broken. Sorry kids, I guess you gotta go home." So he turns off the machine. And then like me and my friend are kind of like in shock with how pissed off this random dude is. I think he got offended by our silence because then he opened the machine and took out the hard drive. You might be thinking like, "Oh, that sucks he took the hard drive," but like, you could always just rehack the machine and throw everything back on there. And that's a very smart thing to think. However, despite this guy being really fucking pissed off, he wasn't stupid. So he took a fucking screw gun and unscrewed the USB panels on the front. So not only is the hard drive gone, you also can't rehack the machine. And that was the thing that killed Brunswick Zone Roselle. And eventually the hard drive got replaced, but it was the Brunswick Zone Lakehurst machine's hard drive. And if you remember what I said earlier about all of these public machines being in different conditions, like Lakehurst was like objectively the shittiest one to replace Roselle with because it like had nothing newer than 4 years old and like had no 15s and had like the shittiest ITG recolor, which was the orange one. Sorry, whoever made the orange one, but ITG Ice was way better. So in 5 minutes time, the Roselle machine was killed and I have no idea where that hard drive went. So now you might be thinking like, "Oh, can't the hacker man just go to a different location and then make that the new machine?" Which technically, yeah, that could be the case. However, at this point, ITG was like 5 years old and these cabinets were getting pretty old. Old enough to where like a bunch of people in their late teens and early 20s could like save up part-time jobs and buy a machine. But by that time, like all of the good players knew each other. So when a couple of them bought machines, they would just play on each other's machines in private, leaving us peasants with our grubby hands to go to the next best machine, which was like Brunswick Zone Woodridge. One of the pads didn't have a bar. And like the closest public arcade that had current content was in Racine, Wisconsin at Paul's Arcade. And that was like an hour-and-a-half drive up, which is like a lot when you're in high school. So like basically that one incident, like 2009, 2010, killed the public ITG scene in Chicagoland. And there were a couple machines that were public trying to like bring it back, but honestly, it just kind of died at that point. So if you're one of those people who were driving down to Roselle one day, ready to play some ITG, and you were greeted by the orange theme that was really bad and no songs, that's my bad. I owe you a drink, or if you don't drink, we can go to the nearest Burger King, grab whatever the fuck they call buck doubles nowadays, and we can sit there and eat our burgers and talk about how excited we were that Tachyon Gamma was going to be put on the machine until someone fucked it all up.